Cope.
Here.
Evans.
Here.
Ready.
Here.
Burkhart.
Here.
Martin.
First item on the agenda this evening is a presentation by Mark Parrington, Snyder and Associates, regarding the road diet project on Northwest 54th Avenue adjacent to Timber Ridge Elementary. Matt.
Good evening. In 2018, there was a need to explore safety improvements along Northwest 54th adjacent to Timber Ridge Elementary. Snyder and Associates, the city entered into an agreement with Snyder and Associates to prepare conceptual alternatives that could be considered for this area. Various alternatives were presented at a city council back in August of 2018. That discussion provided an update and recommended alternative was selected, and then the project was scheduled in our community investment program. In 2023, a contract again was approved for Snyder and Associates to move forward with the alternative design. Tonight, we're bringing back the project to council for a final discussion prior to moving forward with placing the project out to bid. The current plan is to bid the project out in late April, early May, with construction taking place in the summer months of 2025 to not impact the Timber Ridge daily traffic. The project has been designed to keep traffic moving through this area during construction with reduced lane widths to help keep access to the summer activities at Lou Clarkson. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mark Perry with Snyder and Associates to review the proposed project and design, and we'll answer any questions.
Mark.
Mayor, council members, Mark Parrington, Snyder Associates, Ankeny, resident Johnston as well. As Matt mentioned, there's quite a bit of history to this project. We go back as far as 2008 when we first put some flashers out there related to the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit when the school was first opened. And over the years, as we've had continued development and traffic growth, there was concerns about really the speeds through there more than anything, and then the mixing with the school traffic as well as any students crossing in the area. We did an update as we looked at things. Like I said, we went through with a working group and we came up with some alternatives, and then recently we did an update, and we found that actually traffic volumes were down a little bit in 2023 compared to 16 and 17. So that was kind of interesting over the years of growth. And this is even with the development area with Carter Court opening. Traffic was down. It wasn't a significant amount, but a little bit. As far as safety performance in the area, the good thing overall is that in 11 plus years out there total, there has only been 4 crashes between Foxborough and Timber Ridge, Lou Clarkson driveway. None of those related to pedestrian or bicycle. So that's a very good thing. So generally speaking, things have been working pretty well out there. As you may have observed sometime if you've been through there, the school, the PM dismissal is kind of the busiest time out there, but crossing guard in place. And we probably go through about a 15 to 20 minute period in which traffic backs out of the driveway and on the Northwest 54th. But again, some of the congestion helps meter everything, and it tends to work along pretty well. Public Works has also incorporated stop signs out there that are during the school hours that are in place. And again, those seem to work pretty well in getting traffic to respond to it. So really what we did was we came up with these recommended improvements that we've refined a little bit since last time it was discussed with the council. But what you see before you is what we're proposing out there. And again, the general idea is for a road diet type project using some traffic calming techniques to try to help calm people down a little bit more and slow speeds down a little further, whether it be during times of day when the stop signs are up in all directions at Timber Ridge driveway, or whether it be other hours, time periods during the week, summertime, and so on. What you see there, I'll call out at first, is just if you look on the north side there in the bright green, that area is an area in which we intend to remove the curb, move it in, and actually remove the right turn lane onto Foxborough. We've analyzed that and looked at it, and really that is just excess pavement that is not required for the amount of traffic that's out there. So what that'll do is help give us an ability to kind of pinch down the road and narrow it a little bit. And that runs all the way from Foxborough back to the east over to the Lou Clarkson driveway. What you also see in the light gray in there in the middle of it is the sidewalk that's out there today. If you ever walk through that area, you'll note how the sidewalk is very close to the curb as it exists today. This is going to allow us to have a greater buffer between the curb and where that sidewalk will be replaced. So this should make for a better situation for any students walking along that area or anybody else traveling through there on foot. And then you also see a couple of medians in the darker gray right in the middle of the road. We call those to your attention. Those are raised islands that we're actually going to put out there. Similar to some other traffic calming type devices the city has set up in other areas of the city, some of these near schools, or we have a little neck down, a little pinch down area, again, to try to give that bit of a physical obstruction to get people to slow down. Northwest 54th with coming down the hill there, down the grade, all the way down here, people just have a tendency to pick up speed. So we think with the narrowing and these medians, what we hope to do is just kind of increase a little bit of conflict in there visually for people to get them to slow down through the area. So the other thing would be sidewalk ramp there across from Foxborough. You'll see the idea, not a marked crosswalk. We still intend to focus the crosswalk for the students right there at Timber Ridge and Lou Clarkson with the crossing guard that's there. But again, give people the ability, noted it with Carter Court in there now, and some people traveling back and forth by foot or on bicycle. We've seen some people cross up there at Foxborough. So those are kind of the main items. No real change at Timber Ridge. We believe the stop sign control and the flashers that are associated with them, the red flashing lights, those are getting attention. We hope to be able to improve that a little by moving. There's two of those at each location on each side there. With that island out there, the idea being we ought to be able to move one to the interior, so it should give just even a heightened awareness for anybody traveling eastbound to have that stop sign control facing them, in particular at times of day when the school traffic is out there and traveling through. The other thing we've mentioned is just continuing to work. I know the city's looked into it a little with lighting through there, very dark through there. So if we get to the other times of year, we could have something going on at the school evening during the winter months, things like that. If anybody is on foot through their crossing, again, darker, so try to get some better street lighting out there to improve the visibility at those crossing points that would exist. That's about it, short of, I know you've had some review where you've looked at with the school and all the parent traffic. It's always a continued challenge in what we do near all our schools. Hopefully some ideas in there of their ability to use parking lot over at Lou Clarkson, get them a little more off Northwest 54th and get rid of some of the conflict in there. The other point we've made is that raised median there just east of Foxborough. We have narrowed that down a little bit from our original ideas, given some of the backups we've seen with traffic waiting, so that we can still pass two vehicles through there as needed. In case there would be either just through traffic flow, there was an occasional few minutes where we'd see traffic at times get past Carter Court and to that point. So we've narrowed the median so that we still have enough width, a couple vehicles can pass. Again, I think the constriction will help keep the speed down, which is our primary goal. So that's what is just an update to it. There were some other things in that memo. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. We still, I think in the CIP, it was an overall opinion around $425,000 for all the improvements. We'll be overlaying the road too, to clean it all up for the fresh pavement markings and everything when all done. So that's in there as well. And then try to move it right along here coming up in the end of April and May. Other items will be before you as council to act on it so that we could bid the project here early May and get it awarded, because we've got a very tight time frame between Memorial Day and when school would start again in late August, that we want to get them in and out, at least for the substantial part of the construction out on the roadway. So that I'd answer any questions if you have any for me.
Council have any questions for Mark?
Yeah, I do have a couple questions. So Mark, looking at the kind of the Lou Clarkson, Timber Ridge side of it, and the stop signs. So will there be, is the idea that there'll be three sort of that are flip down, sort of temporary stop signs, is that right? They're not, because they're not permanent stop signs.
Yeah, the ones that are out there, there's a picture in that memo. If you can pop over that memo and go down a page or two, I think I threw a photo in there of one of them. Back up, maybe about page 2 or go down one more. Go down. Okay. Yeah, that's the setup with the stop signs out there, at least for Northwest 54th, in going east-west. And the idea being, Matt and I have discussed, median's not a lot of area out there, but the idea being there's an additional one over on your left. And so the idea being we can move that over and get that to the interior, so that now you'll have 2.
So there would still just be 2 stop
Yeah,
signs.
facing you in one direction. Correct.
They'll just be closer together.
Okay. It'd still be flipped down, temporary. You said something about flashers
There are red flashers associated with those as well.
at those stop signs.
That are on when the signs are flipped down, so that again, that hopefully gets attention, especially if we have a inclement weather day or, foggy, something like that. Those are in place as
Okay, I
well.
wasn't familiar with those being part of it. And I do think that that's important. I do think, as I look at this project, I think there's important value in, I have most of my concern is regarding kind of what happens at the, kind of on the east end of the project at the school. And I think I know one of the concerns I've always had is that there'll be a school events. Yeah, you always have a choir concert like in November, December, right? When the days are really short. And so by the time that concert's going on, it's dark out, but there's not enough parking in the Lou Clarkson lot, so people park across the street and then they're trying to cross. And so I like your emphasis on streetlights. So I'd like to see where that kind of fits into the actual plan. Will that be incorporated as part of this, what's planned for calendar year 2025?
Yeah, we've actually added some light to that corridor on 54th, would be east of 86th Street. We need to take a look at the intersections between Foxborough down to Lou Clarkson and look if we need to light those pedestrian crossings right there. We probably need to incorporate that into this plan. Now, it'll depend on Mid-American and their supply of streetlights, if those get installed yet this year, or if that would be next year, but we would push to try and get those installed yet this year.
And then as far as, Mark, you also mentioned the median, like moving sort of westward, the raised median, and having the ability for 2 cars to pass. I presume that where the 2 cars would pass would be east of where the raised median is, because where the median is, you wouldn't be able to get 2 cars through.
Correct. Yeah, what you see is really there's room westbound, single vehicle, and our cross section there, I think, was about 12 and a half, 14 feet. But going eastbound, we've seen the parents back up even on a nice sunshiny day. They backed up past Carter Court, so we have that momentary time in there in which we still need to be able to get 2 vehicles through. Again, what's paramount in my mind is be an emergency situation. So that's why we narrowed the median down a little to increase that pavement width a little bit, as you asked about, just east of Foxborough.
Yeah, I like the idea of the median. I'm still not sold on the need to eliminate the concrete on the north side there. I'm not sure that's worth the money we're spending on it. So I've never really been a believer in that, and I'm still not. So just for the body's awareness, that part of the project I'm dubious of. I just don't see anybody who's crossing at Foxborough, right? If you're crossing, you're primarily crossing. If you're getting to the school, you're going down to Lou Clarkson and Timber Ridge, and that's where most of the crossing is happening. And so I've yet to be convinced that we're getting a lot of benefit for the $400,000 or so, or the element of that's eliminating that pavement on the north side. So just making people aware of that. So.
Mayor, I have just a couple of questions. Mark, the raised medians, what type of height are we talking as far as those medians?
I'm trying to remember in those, if we're doing about 6 to 8 inches, I is about
And-
that height when we're done, yep.
All right, and then the other kind of follow-up question there is, it is, other than during school time, it is 35 through there. Those medians will continue, you're not recommending that we decrease the everyday speed limit, the 35 should be able to be
No.
fine to,
I think the original posted speed limit 35 through there, it's logical, it fits with the nature of the corridor and what it is, and really the volume of activity, the conflict isn't that great. However, I recommended the reduced speed zone back in '08 for the 25 mile per hour limit that was related to the school hours. Yeah,
Okay.
we still think that's appropriate. Our hope here is that during some of those off times, as Councilmember Cope mentioned, when you have these maybe evening events or something else going on, or it could even be summertime, maybe with ball games going on, things of that nature, is that we still do something to see if we can get speeds down a little bit all hours.
okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions, council? Mark, back to Councilman Cope's concern about the benefit that we would receive from removing that concrete and redesigning it the way that's proposed here. Are we actually providing a safer walking path for kids along that street because there's further distance between them and the moving traffic?
Yeah, that's certainly an intent. I mean, it's not just the narrowing of the roadway, but again, it gives us that luxury of now there's a greater area out there for the sidewalk spacing, as well as the parking area, I tend to call it, between the curb and the sidewalk. When Matt's folks are pushing snow, again, gives us greater ability to store that snow and still have an open sidewalk there as well. So I believe any kind of a buffer is helpful. We were just out there on Friday, and yeah, that reminds us when you get out there, there's only a couple of feet behind that curb and that sidewalk. And again, I've certainly been out there enough. There are kids walking along there, going to the school. So I think that is, that's one of the pluses of the area. It allows us to create that better buffer.
And I appreciate Councilman Cope's concern there. I've run that road and I've run on that sidewalk, and it's scary how close that sidewalk is to the street. So if that gives kids more protection as they're walking along that sidewalk, I can see the benefit of doing it. Don't like to spend the money, but I can see the benefit of doing it.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Would you say, so you've talked about how getting the pedestrian sidewalk away from the street curb is a good thing. Would trees be also a good thing there to give the sense that there are things along the parkway? There's a dividing line between cars and pedestrians, and those trees kind of help with that buffer? I'm leading you down the path, and I hope that you will say what I want you to say.
Yeah, without a doubt, as a traffic engineer, any fixed object out there is the way I'll refer to it. Anytime you have fixed objects along a corridor that are just pushed in closer versus set way back, usually we see anything like that just starts to give people that feeling of it closes in on them.
And they slow down.
And yeah, it tends to, again, it's with the general assumption that most of the population drives, an appropriate speed. And that is how that tends to work at times. So whether it's trees or utility poles or other things or street lights, different things, at times those can have that impact. This corridor is just, in general, it has a lot of width to it, really, for the nature of the roadway.
And I apologize, Mayor, and I know that we're over time, but he's here, and I want to ask this question. The median that you have proposed here, that's 8 foot wide by 160 feet long, doesn't say anywhere what that median is made of, whether it's concrete or grass. What is your opinion on medians like that are, say, significant? It's 8 foot is not generous. 8 foot is where we would put a tree between the back of curb and a sidewalk, but it's not generous. how do you feel though those medians should be? Should they be more concrete in a concrete world? Or should, I'm sorry, I'm so transparent. Or should they be grass?
Wearing my traffic engineer hat and my resident hat. Which do you want me to do? No,
How about the resident hat?
I think the concrete medians, we get to a point, and I know Matt can have some input here too, but we get to a point of where functionally can we put any kind of proper plant material? And I know you've got people who are going to talk a lot more about our beautifying our streets. So it's just a function of the space and whether we can get something that will reasonably survive in there is what we go through. My main objective with this is creating more of this conflicting item that will hope to help convince people to slow down through the area, which is my primary goal, is worrying about, we're trying to get rid of crashes right now. So that's what I'm focused on. Can it be done in different ways other than just concrete? Can it be done with other types of plant materials or hardscapes or other things? Absolutely. No reason it can't. We have certain things we try to avoid to, again, not put the driver at risk either, though. So those are some thoughts for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Mark?
So the median is 8 feet wide there? Is that
Yeah.
what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah, that's what we're going for. Yep.
Would there ever be any consideration of making it a wider median? And then maybe the way to control the speed is to make the median wider as opposed to getting rid of the lane.
Right.
I'm just trying to make sure that we aren't just sort of so committed to doing this one way that we don't look at any other way to do it, so.
Certainly, one of the things that, again, we looked at was, having that median. Our initial idea was to have it even wider. But again, we had concerns that we were going to create the pinch point with the school backup of traffic.
Right.
Right in there under where the word raised is, right in there past Carter Court. Occasionally in the afternoons, you'll see the parents back up to that area. And that was my only concern. I mean, ideally, if I were just trying to constrict it down to speed, I wasn't worried about those occasional stopped cars, you bet we'd narrow that down and we get that down like 12, 13 feet. But given the occurrence 5 days a week during the school year, that's my only concern with that.
I guess my only question is, is there any value in making the median wider going further to the north as opposed to the.
Right.
And I realize, well, then that conflicts with the elimination of the lane.
Yeah.
I think that there may be value in looking at that option as well.
Right. I think it was, what we looked at was, first and foremost, many years ago when we were looking at all this, was that right turn lane going on to Foxborough, that we felt that it was just excess pavement.
Right.
And, unnecessary. And so looking at, then we were trying to look at the convenience of, well, if we're going to narrow everything, pick a side and kind of do it to one side. So since we were removing so much right turn lane anyways, we're already removing about half, 60% of the curb on that north side. So that's why we kind of took that north side and brought that all inward. It's those kind of things are all possible. We just have to look at how the alignment of everything would work through there. But I understand your question. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Not Matt?
One thing to point out, we did meet with the Green Meadows West Homeowners Association last Friday, and we showed them this concept, and they did like the concept. They were supportive of that too. So just let you know that we have talked to the Homeowners Association, because if you've been on that corner, there's a retaining wall currently that sits there, and that retaining wall would go away. They were okay with that, so.
Is the retaining wall behind the sidewalk, or where is the retaining?
Yes.
Yes,
North and south.
that retaining wall sits pretty much right adjacent to the sidewalk that sits there today. And I think there's like I said, a foot and a half between the back of curb and that sidewalk. And with this concept, we would push that sidewalk back. There would be roughly about 8.5, 9 feet between the back of curb and the face of the sidewalk.
Well, thank you, Mark, for your patience and hanging in there with us as we work through this and come up with something that we think is going to work. So this is going to go out for bid.
I think we'll go back, we'll take a look at a couple of the points that were made about
Okay.
the wider median to the north, the street lighting. We'll get those, take a look at those, see how we can incorporate those in the plans. And then, yes, we need to get the plans out on the street so that we can get it constructed yet this summer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark, one more thing. I would recommend that if we are going to be, proposing street trees, that it ends up being a line item in your road estimate. Thank you.
Okay, we have one more item under the work session. And that is a presentation on the streetscape master plan, framework concepts, and public outreach. Hopefully we can get this done in about 10 minutes.
We will try. City staff continues to work with Bolton and Mink on a streetscape master plan, which will identify areas to provide enhancements to intersections and treatments to street corridors. They would be implemented in future roadway projects and could also be retrofit into existing roadway corridors. Nate Weidel will be providing a brief update on the survey results, work performed, and information gathered up to this point. Concepts were shared with the Streetscape Working Committee. The committee provided their feedback on each, resulting in a kind of a combination of concepts. On April 1st, the consultant and the city communication staff deployed an update to our residents on concepts via a short public video. There will be an opportunity for the public to provide feedback at the end of that video. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nate.
All right, good evening. I'll move through this about as quickly as I can here without being too short. So just a couple of things here, some design updates for the beautification framework plan.
It's not really you, Nate, so
What's that?
it's not really you controlling it.
Oh, amazing. Okay, cool. Okay, so just a couple of really brief recaps on a public survey that was issued back in January. Just wanted to highlight a couple of questions here that respondents gave some good feedback on. We heard a lot about tree-lined boulevards and entry monuments, as well as trails on several of Johnston's primary streets as some of the most preferred elements of Johnston's existing streetscapes. On the bottom here, then, elements that members of the public would want to see more of on Johnston streetscapes are 32% street trees, 20% public art and sculpture, and then 20% landscaping. So you'll see as we move through these slides here, what you'll start to see our focus on those items. Here we've got some images from the public survey that people were really drawn to as well. Highlighting things like monumentation, public art, accent lighting, street trees, and landscaping. So for the committee, we looked at three different themes, explored three different themes of different form and different types of monumentation, as well as landscape enhancements in roundabouts and medians. From there, we let's see. Yep, there you go. So from there, we arrived at what we're calling a preferred or refined design. What this is really tied to is Johnston's historical connection to the landscape, and as well as some of the open areas of Johnston, ag commercial uses, as well as military land use areas that have really left a pretty open character in parts of Johnston. But then we also have an urban fabric that lays right over the top of that landscape. So you'll start to see materials and themes start to pull those things together. Things like gently rolling topography, geology, and native plant communities, as well as some of your urban core features as well. So this is the refined design of the monumentation elements of streetscapes that we would be proposing here. The two options that the steering committee really gravitated towards actually work pretty well complementary to each other. So the top row that you see here is a monumentation that we would suggest be implemented in urban core areas like Merle Hay right off of the interstate or 86th right off of the interstate. These are higher impact type monumentation that visually just draw more attention to. And then as well as what we show here on the right side, some planter rail accents that would be used in pedestrian-centric spaces. On the bottom here, then we have more residential or open area monumentation, just a little bit of a lighter touch. Yep, and then so moving from there into the urban core monumentation more specifically, these are reusing or actually using monumentation that is currently existing in Johnston. That was one of the things that we heard in the survey, is that the monumentation within Johnston right now is a pleasing aspect of the community that people really wanted to preserve. And so really what we're doing here is we're just building off of that. We're building a contemporary theme from that based off of the contemporary nature and landform items. The bottom image here shows how some accent lighting could be worked into this monumentation. I would visualize these as small cabinet type sign materials so that you can get some interior lighting and really create some nice visual interest at night. Moving on to the lighter touch, the residential monumentation. These would be, so it's similar in nature in that we're adding some metal, painted metal items to the front of the sign or the front of the monumentation to add some interest. But then on the bottom, the lighting is really just taking on a character of ground lighting up on the sign, just a nice gentle wash. We have some planter rail accents here. Alluded to these earlier, so I'm just going to slide right through this one, and you'll see some visualization as we get a little bit further down the line. Okay, so this is a roundabout plan layout. This would be a typical roundabout, so not necessarily that this is tied to any one street corridor. You'll see that we have labeled a primary street running left to right, and then a secondary street north to south. And the reason why we call that out is because on these primary streets, streets that maybe they have a higher use of commercial land uses or other things that we want to feature, like entries into town. Point being, though, that we would start to pull some of the roundabout landscape enhancements out into the median of that primary street. So some of the things here that I want to highlight then from a design standpoint is really just the juxtaposition that I mentioned earlier about the urban fabric laying over the landform shapes and forms here. So we have the landscape is kind of flowing through the site here, and then we have these colored concrete bands that lay over the top. I don't know, I probably can't really point. That's okay. So other things here, just a mix of materials using landscape as well as natural limestone materials, colored concrete, and then the monumentation that we shared earlier on. We're showing that as you approach a roundabout intersection like this, that we can start to employ some of those column monument markers as you're entering into the roundabout. One of the key features of all of these plans that you'll see is that we are using 18-inch concrete banding, especially around at the back of the curb. That'll be important for maintenance purposes, just to make sure that there's a nice clean edge there. That's it on that plan, so we can move on. Some visualization here of what the center of these roundabouts would start to look like as we lay that concrete banding over the top of the landform style planting. And then a typical intersection here, again, same approach here, that this is not any one particular intersection in the community, but that we would have a primary street and a secondary street. The primary street here runs top to bottom and shows opportunities to add column monument markers as well as colored concrete banding. And then we have the landscaping kind of flowing through the intersection again. On the right side here, you can start to actually see some of this get visualized, and you can see a little bit how those column monument markers can be added into the center of the medians, as well as in the streetscape to the left, right image, but to the left of that right image there. And then one thing that I want to make sure I hit on before we move on from this, we do show some areas where trails or sidewalks may have to be adjusted, widened out to widen the streetscape areas. So on the bottom of that image, I'm showing what in a situation like this where you may need to have some right-of-way acquisition or potentially like a pedestrian access easement agreement with a private property owner. I also show on the left side of the intersection what could be a pedestrian node with enhancements like that planter rail that I mentioned. One thing to consider on this is we could look at adjusting the trail or walk locations so that those pedestrian nodes can happen on the back side of the trail instead of between the trail and the curb. Just makes for a more comfortable environment for pedestrians to be in. And then we also talk about on the top side, left side of the intersection, but on the top side, we're showing how street trees, if we have some issues with street trees being planted in the streetscape for utility reasons or because that streetscape is too narrow, we could look at, this is one thing we will be looking at actually as we get further down the line here, of different ways that the city can employ policy changes that would allow them to start to pursue some agreements with private property to get some more street trees in there. Moving on from there, we have some more visualization images, again, of those column monuments, and then you can see the colored concrete banding at an angle there going through the intersection or going through the median. And then on the bottom, we have a couple of images of the pedestrian nodes that I mentioned earlier, just how we can start to get some seating areas and those planter rails, just to create a really nice environment for pedestrians to be in, which contributes to the overall walkability of the community, which then ties back to the survey responses that we got. Okay, so then moving from there, just a little bit about project schedule and next steps. We do have our next steering committee meeting is on April 15th. That'll be our third steering committee meeting. We also do have then we have an interactive update right now out to the public. I believe it's on the city webpage, as well as was advertised in the Johnston Living magazine. That interactive update gives respondents an opportunity to give us a little bit of feedback on how we're doing. And so that will close on April 22nd. So we'll be able to get an idea of how the public thinks we're doing on that. And then we have a public engagement pop-up event on May 3rd. That'll give members of the public a chance to stop by and see what we're doing there as well. Key next steps as far as work approach goes, we are going to be looking at street tree implementation strategies. That kind of gets into a little bit of the policy that we were talking about earlier, but then also just some of the important things that we need to be considering, things like utilities, things like how much space in a median or a streetscape in order to add trees. And then we'll also be looking then at the at prioritization of certain project options with the steering committee, and then looking at costs as well. Tracking for about a June completion. Got through it. Any questions?
Else have any questions for Nathan?
One question I have, and I can't, this may be as much for Nathan, or, I remember when we were talking about one of these studies, we were going to put a sort of an emphasis on Merle Hay Road. Is that this study or a different study?
So this will apply to like your arterial, your collector street. The Merle Hay study, that beautification is kind of a separate. We'll be able to identify those areas on Merle Hay where we can put some of this landscape or streetscape on
Okay.
Merle Hay. But I think the other project is really kind of, this is basically inside the right of way. I think the other one that we're talking about is outside of the right of way. So we'll be having some further discussion as that moves forward.
And then I think it's really amazing looking, and I really especially like the focus on the roundabouts. The one question I would sort of have is, especially as I look at this concept design roundabout plan, looks like we're doing a lot of planting and a lot of landscape work that I presume maintenance on that has to be accounted for. And so I hope as part of our cost plans, I have a little concern about we run something out and everybody looks at this and says, this looks amazing, let's do it. And we don't take into account the significant maintenance, time and effort and labor it's going to require to maintain that, to look this good, right? And so I want to make sure, I heard a mention of costs, that you're incorporating both what the expectations would be on the labor, on the staffing needs, and also maintenance costs, because we certainly know that we're facing an environment where our ability to invest in some of those things is getting more constrained, not more robust. And I just want to make sure that we're not raising expectations at a point when we're really not able to fulfill them because this does look to be like to me, a pretty significant maintenance commitment that for whether it's Public Works or somebody else to maintain. So that's a little anxiety I do have about some of the stuff once we get outside of the roundabout circles.
Yes, we have directed the consultant to remember that maintenance cost and the time of maintenance. So I know that has been a direction that we have given. We also have been working with Jeff Hubbard, Parks Director, on what that is, and he's had some input on that as well. So we'll continue to move forward and keep that in consideration. We understand that maintenance takes a lot of time and a lot of staff, so we want to create something that is low maintenance, but yet still looks attractive to the citizens.
The other thing I can share with that really quick is a lot of those costs of those, we see those as being low-mow fescues, which is really just a seeded down area that you mow once or twice a year. So we kind of have a nice fuzzy texture to it, and it'll visually appear as part of the perennials and the flowering landscape, but it'll be just a little bit of a different maintenance regime.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so we have completed the items on our work session agenda. So let's go ahead and adjourn the work session.